Good afternoon, Year 12, and welcome to Changing Places number 4. Now today we're going to look at management and manipulation of place meaning. So we're going to look at exogenous factors and investments that come from a range of spatial benefactors. So for instance, local, national, regional, for instance, or in fact international as well. So bear in mind your spatial and temporal factors during today's lesson. So just a quick look briefly at the topic tick list. Now we're going to be looking at how place meaning can be changed over time, and I want you to consider in particular the impacts of external forces. Just to get us started, I found this quote and it was particularly meaningful. And find the place where every single thing you see tells you to stay. I just want you to pause the video here and think about somewhere you have been and that you've just got that instant feel of topophilia and you never wanted to leave. So what we're going to look at now is a model made by the Project for Public Spaces, and it's what makes a great place. Now I'd like you to pause the video here and think of a place that you consider great and have a look at all of the different factors within this model and see which of those areas actually apply to the place that you're thinking of. Now again, coming back to that spatial impact of placemaking. Now, I want you to think about 3 processes during today's lesson. So the process of gentrification, so where you have run-down, neglected areas that are improved in their status. Now, you might think about inner city Bristol from GCSE here. Now, these are often done by obviously external or exogenous factors, such as large-scale companies that develop the area. Gentrification can be done by either private or public benefactors giving the money to the area, depending on what is necessary. So it could be large housing estates or companies that are investing in the area, but it could be the national government, for instance. Rebranding, so this is again can be done by many different actors, e.g. the national government, local government, or in fact private investors, and that gives a place a new lease of life. And then obviously you've got regeneration, so again exogenous factors improving and investing in an area. And these can obviously shape the place as they occur. So moving on, we're going to look at some relationships and connections with places. And unfortunately, when some places change, many people that live there might actually feel that that change has actually been forced upon them. And that can actually lead to conflict and also lead to people being quite unhappy about the changes that have happened. You only have to think back to our case study from the week before last, of Hackney, London, and the exogenous investment from the US company that actually led to social cleansing. So sometimes changing of places can actually be quite negative or perceived quite negatively by insiders. So Cadbury's chocolate. This is quite an interesting case study. I'm going to ask you to pause here and have a little look at this. But in Bourneville Village in Birmingham, which is where the family came from, the Cadbury family, they actually invested hugely in the shaping of the place as their company became wealthier. And actually in 2003 it was named the nicest place in Britain to actually live. An absolute rural idyll, you might say. If you have a look at the images that are in front of you there, you maintain the historical architecture of when it was built, but it is still in pristine condition. We're now going to look at Devonport in Plymouth, which will actually be the major regeneration case study that we do today. We'll go into a bit more depth in a second, but this is an area that is known for its naval influence, and it has experienced significant social problems and social deprivation of late that have had to be addressed. Again, you can see some images here of historical Devonport in Plymouth and now the sort of gentrified, regenerated version. But we're going to come on to that case study in a lot more depth in a moment. So we've seen this, or we'll have a look at this question, and we will come back to this a little bit later, and we can apply many different case studies to this question. So we're now on to a major case study. So our rebranding case study will be Plymouth, okay? So what I want you to do is pause this video here and watch this YouTube link, and I want you to make a note, sort of mind map about what Plymouth is actually like. You may have heard of it before, you may not have done. So pause the video here and take a little bit of time to gain a sense of place. So first of all, we've spoken about the fact that it is a naval base, for instance. You can see on the image here it has a rich history as well. This is a statue of Sir Francis Drake. Sir Francis Drake is a very famous figure of history, and actually was playing bowls in Plymouth at the beginning of the Spanish Armada. And they obviously pay homage to him in a statue form, and it's a huge tourist attraction. Now you can have a little look now at the deprivation of Plymouth. So the white areas are the least deprived, and the black areas are the very deprived areas of Plymouth by neighbourhood. So you can see that there is a stark contrast between the lived experience of people in this city. So I want you to have a little read through some of the multiple rebranding strategies that Plymouth has been part of, from both regional and national exogenous investments. We'll also take a little look through history. It's often coined the ocean city, is Plymouth, the city of voyage and discovery, and for its military importance as well. We'll be creating a timeline now throughout the history of Plymouth, and all of the different changes that have shaped the place to be the city that it is today. In fact, it became a city in 1928, as you can see. Unfortunately, in the 1940s, it was bombed during the Second World War Blitz, but this actually gave a post-World War II opportunity for Plymouth to rebrand itself. Now, I want you to use the following article, please, to have a look and evaluate the successes of the rebranding strategies that have taken place within Plymouth to socially construct a new meaning. So pause after each of the pages, please, and make some notes about these rebranding attempts. So basically, it's not been taken too well, as it's seen that they just want to attract more rich people and actually socially cleanse again, like we've seen in Hackney. The full article is here if you would like to get a bit more of a grasp on this rebranding technique. We've also got Let's Talk Plym in the news as well, and you can look at the influence of media and social platforms on trying to rebrand. You can see some of the suggestions that people have put on here. More recently, I'd like you to pause the video here. More recently, Plymouth so this article is from February last year. Plymouth is about to become the entertainment capital of the Southwest, so actually more exogenous change, more recent change, that again will help Plymouth in its rebrand. However, it has been said, and the article is mentioned below, but we can't keep rebranding Plymouth. So they've had Positively Plymouth, they've had the Ocean City, they keep desperately trying to rebrand Plymouth, but there's only so many times that you can try and do this successfully. So I want you to develop this case study a little bit more by using pages 84 and obviously the previous slides and information. And I want you to have a think about and write a few paragraphs about whether or not Plymouth's multiple rebrand attempts have actually been successful. So these are the, this is the textbook page, but I want you to consider the attempts and who was funding them. So was it local, national or global? Okay, so next we look to Wales for rebranding attempts. I'm not sure how many of you have actually read Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, but Lewis Carroll was actually inspired by a little place in North Wales where he met Alice, his friend who used to holiday here, and he had a real sense of connection here and biographical connection, hence the reason that the story was told. Llandudno was actually given a rebrand as Alice Town for heritage tourism, where this area was falling in numbers, so therefore they wanted to rebrand it through literature and myth to get people to come back. Just give you a moment to read through the notes here. So I'd like you to create a little case study for Alice Town and the rebranding techniques for heritage tourism. So the fact that this beautiful area is beautiful endogenously anyway, so just the landscape, but obviously what they're trying to do is to appeal to people's mythical connections with place, much like, as you can see in the bottom corner there, in the Lake District with the works of Beatrix Potter, which is her famous cottage on the top of the hill. Okay, so a bit of thinking time. To what extent was the rebrand of Llandudno a success in promoting heritage tourism? And I want you to think about how helpful media was in this, because you can actually download the Alice app and track through the rabbit burrows and all of the wonderful adventures written passionately about by Carroll. Okay, next one. So, great Mandarin names for Great Britain. So to improve tourism in Great Britain, we decided to go viral and give Chinese people the opportunity to rebrand our tourist destinations by renaming them. So pause me here and have a look at some of the funny names that the Chinese audience actually gave to some of our major structures. Now, they were given the opportunity to rename our trailhead attractions, and they're a perfect audience because of the emerging wealth within the Chinese population. So again, I'd like you to think about how important media here was in this rebrand and whether or not this has actually benefited the UK for tourism income. Now, lastly, we're going to have a little look at Africa. Now, when Africa is said to you as a continent, I want you to briefly pause me here and think about what comes to mind. Now, I'm assuming you probably said, like the images I put at the bottom here, sort of death, disease, poverty, desertification, anything else with D I can think of, disaster. Now, communities are actually challenging the place meaning of places in Africa. So I'll show you this quick wordle. When we think about it, we think of hunger, blood diamonds, mines, the wildlife, the big five, safaris, poverty, child soldiers, war, genocide, AIDS. I mean, it doesn't paint a very beautiful picture. And again, another one here, with other words associated with Africa. But the youth or African communities and young people don't want this to be what we think when we think of this continent. So there was a whole Twitter feed of the Africa the media never shows you. So totally media centric to try and turn people's topophobia into topophilia. So I'd like you to pause me here and have a quick watch of how these young people are trying to change people's opinions of what Africa's basically like, and allow them to have that tourist gaze instead of just these perceptions of topophobia that we get in the media. And I'd like you to attempt those two questions, please. Okay, application time, not too much to do. I'd like you to complete a 6 marker and I'd like you to plan the 20 marker using, again, like last time, I would like you to use the 20 marker planning grid. So the first one is an AO3 question to analyse the text. Now be sure in this one to actually use quotes from the text to show that you are clearly analysing. It's not very data heavy here, therefore you will be hinging all of your points on actual quotations from the Sunday Times newspaper. Have a go at self-assessing. The other 6 marker here again will require a slightly different approach, because this is, as I'll show you here, an AO1 2 marks and an AO2 4 marks. So application still is important, but so too is your knowledge of this. So this is looking or evaluating rebranding attempts like we did in Plymouth, but obviously this one is looking at Brighton and Blackpool, again using figures and your own knowledge here to help you. And then lastly, I just want you to have a go at planning this 20 marker using the crib sheet here, please. I'd like you to bring some of the previous case studies that we have done into this, as well as Plymouth and Wales and Africa the Media Never Shows You, in order to attempt to plan at this one. There are some additional resources on Plymouth that you'll find in the folder. Good luck, guys, and I look forward to having our lesson and feedback on Wednesday.